Hey guys, I'm gonna do a quick video on a Hellwig product. It's helper springs. Just put them in the F-150 yesterday. I'm gonna show you the installation. The model on the Hellwig springs is 61902. That's the model for, I believe, 09 to current F-150s, which is what I have. And just show you this quick. It's just the instruction page to show you what they look like. They're helper springs to go over your regular springs. I'm gonna do this kind of quick so that I don't run through 17 minutes. But so we have a 14,000 pound trailer, flatbed, and a T650, which weighs right in around 9,600 pounds. My F-150 in its current configuration has got pretty heavy duty tow setup from the factory, is rated for around 10,000. We pull on a pintle hook, and I wanted to, when we put the bobcat forward on the trailer to load the truck, we're putting a lot of weight on the back of the truck. So to help that, I decided to go with the Hellwig product, and these are about, I paid $320 for these shipped, and they add 2,500 pounds of capacity to the flat load of the truck. So they add 2,500 pounds of capacity. You can look up the specs yourself. You can look them up on eBay, 61902, and they install right over your top of your springs. What I did have to do was, in the instructions, it doesn't tell you this from Hellwig, but I jacked it up from the back here to unload the suspension and put blocks in to just for secondary safety. I left the wheels on, installed them from the side here. They just bolt down in the front on the Ford. See if I can save you guys some time, but in the front on the Ford, you have to completely compress this silencer, and that's to give you clearance to the frame here. So even it says that in their instructions. I can tell you that the distance between this top nut and the bottom of this, to save you some time, is 2 3/4. You're never going to have a socket long enough to blip that up, so it's going to just be a lot of cranking. If you have these are 7/8 or a 22 millimeter, the nuts on there. If you can get yourself a ratcheting and wrench, that'll help. But I just cranked them up by hand because none of my sockets would, my deep sockets would fit all the way up there. The back one here, you can set the preload on these as much as you want. Now they're going to load when you load the truck, but you can preload these all the way down to cranking them down as much as 2 inches from where they are when they're just snug. So when you snug this down, you can go 2 inches more of preload. This has got from this nut to the bottom of this post with the preload that I put on, it's 1.5 inches, because I had to snug that front one all the way down. I didn't want to totally preload the springs because it'll make the ride really stiff. But so from this top nut to the bottom of this was 1.5 inches. Did that on both sides. And it rides beautiful unloaded. You know, there is a noticeable difference in the ride, much less sway in the truck. It's not as soft a ride as without it. But now I've increased my capacity 2,500. It did lift the back a little bit. So I have a little higher profile. I can show you inside. Apologize, I'm kind of reaching in here, but these center brackets, you do have to monkey with these a little bit to make sure that you have clearance in here. So this one I had to flip upside down, and I can't see what it was clearing, but I think if you look down here, this brake hose, this brake line right here, with this sticking down, I was worried that it would rub that brake line, so I flipped that one upside down, inverted, and the one down there just installs as is. Cleared fine. It clears the shock. No problems. I'll show you the other side real quick. I have had this out, been driving all day today. There, no rattles, no bumps. Did have my son jump on the back so I could look at the clearance, everything underneath, and make sure everything was tight. I will check them again in a couple days, but right now it's just rock solid ride. Very, very happy with them so far. If I had to give you a time frame, it took me maybe an hour and a half to install them. Climbing underneath, I was doing it. You can look around. This was all covered with snow when I was doing it yesterday, but so I installed these the same way. I can also tell you, to help you out, that the distance from the front of this to this bracket to give you clearance here, my distance is between an inch and a quarter on both sides. So that'll help you out with where you can snug this down, so you won't have to move them back and forward once you get it all in place. Distance is the same. It's like 2 3/4 from this nut to here, cinched all the way down in the center. Exactly the same on the back. I preloaded the back one the same way. I'll give you a look inside, see what I had to do to clear stuff. Sorry, I got to get my head in here too so I can see what you're looking at. Yeah, same situation. I flipped this one upside down so that the bottom of the bolt, the U-bolt, wasn't going to rub on this brake line. And the front one I inverted so that instead of the back of this bracket, this little U-shaped back here should point in. I inverted it the other way so it would clear this shock, which is no problem. What else can I tell you? So I did clean off all the leaves with WD-40. I did hose all the points down with WD-40 afterwards, so I wasn't trapping any rust in there or anything like that. I zapped in, once I set these in place, got all the brackets on them, I zapped them up with a impact gun. I think that's about it. So yeah, so just to tell you, to save you some time, I did have to jack up this to take the load off the suspension, or if you don't do that on the F-150, the curvature of these springs, sorry I'm moving you around funny, but the curve on these springs will not allow you to get them in. They'll bottom out here and bottom out on the frame. You won't be able to put them in unless you jack up the back to take the load off the suspension. But you do not need to pull the tires. You can do it right on the driveway in the ground. I did chalk the front tires so it couldn't roll away or anything like that. I did not have to lift these off the ground. I just had to take some of the load off the suspension to get those in. And you just basically can go right in through the outside here, fit them down like that, put them in, fit the second one down like that, put it on top. There's nothing in the way. It looks like if you wanted to on these, now you can see I didn't, but if you wanted to, when you just snug all these brackets down, there'll be a specific amount of that threaded rod that's hanging out. You could mark where that is, which would mean that that would be the least amount of threaded rod you need hanging out to put a nut on it. You could mark them all with Sharpie and go in afterwards and zip them all off. Now, I wouldn't want to zip them off now because you don't know how much you need if you ever had to take them out, how much travel you need to be able to get a nut back on them. Now, you could always put a clamp on them and clamp them down and still get it. I understand that. So if you don't like the look of them hanging down, you know, you could zip them off the bottoms. How are they going to hold up to rust? I don't know. That's to be determined. Yeah, giving me 2,500 more pounds back here of capacity to, you know, just basically leveling the truck out when I have to move the Bobcat up and load the back end. You're not really increasing. So this truck will tow 10,000. You're not really increasing your 10,000 towing capacity. What you're doing is you're just making it so when I put the Bobcat on that trailer and I have to pull it, the weight center just forward of the tandem to put, you know, approximately 1,000 to 1,200 pounds on the truck. to keep the trailer from porpoising, you need some weight on the tongue. And that's about where it works out percentage-wise. So when you do that, you're squatting the back of this truck with that weight. So what this is going to do is it's going to keep the back of the truck from squatting. The truck itself will pull it fine. Obviously, I have trailer brakes and everything, so I'm not worried about stopping and starting. It's just about how low this truck will squat when you put 1,200 pounds on the tongue, on that pedal hook right there. So I thought it was a good solution. I'm very happy with them so far, how they ride on the highway, and I will probably do a video tomorrow in the truck while I'm driving so you can see. I mean, if anything, it's smoother and more stable than it was before. I've had it up to almost 80 today on the highway. There's no downside. If anything, it feels like the truck's smoother on the highway. I think maybe it took some of the harmonics out of the suspension. So it feels smoother on the highway at high speeds, feels a lot more stable. I drove around town looking for bumps yesterday to hit some bumps at decent speed to see if I could really rattle the back end, to see if there were any rattles. No rattles or anything. I did have helper springs in my 2500 HD because I had a refrigerator unit on the back. And when I took the refrigerator unit out, the back end of that truck was like bobtailing a semi. It was really, really harsh. Whenever you went over railroad tracks or a bump or something, the back end was bouncing. It was wicked hard. This is nothing like that. The truck rides perfectly smooth. So far pretty happy. You can do it all with hand tools, no special tools required. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I should tell you. I mean, I gave you basically the dimensions. So you want to keep, as long as you put that front bracket an inch ahead, or an inch to inch and a quarter ahead of that little, I don't know if it's an overload spring or whatever underneath, everything else works out on both sides. So that's the deal. I gave you the dimensions on how much to cinch them down because there's very little information about how much to preload these. So I gave you all that info. I showed you the ones to flip upside down if you have an F-150 like I do. So that'll save you having to experiment with it. And yeah, so just wanted to do this. And like I said, I'll probably shoot a video in the truck driving and maybe drive around and try and drive over some speed bumps or something like that, so you can tell there's just no noise, no rattle, no nothing, perfectly smooth. Pretty happy with it so far. So it's Hellwig product 61902. Here is the instruction manual. Here is just Hellwig's literature if you want to do a still shot of it. Let me get on the truck. What it looks like on the installed on the axle. And like I said, I had to invert a couple of those. That's the schematic. Here's all the directions. It does tell you right here when you're doing it on an F-150 to make sure that you clamp down the front U-bolt until the gap in the polyurethane silencer bushing is completely compressed, which I did. That gives you that 2 3/4 in the front from the top bolt, the top nut down to the bottom of the U-bolt. Pretty simple. Like I said, it took me no more than an hour and a half, and that was laying around on that piece of old countertop right there in the snow out here. It was 20 degrees. So yeah, that's it. Just wanted to give you that update, and like I said, I'll probably shoot one to show the ride, but pretty happy. You can see the stance of the truck maybe. So to me, just looking at the stance of the truck right now, it did raise it back there. I wouldn't say a lot. I would say somewhere between an inch and maybe 1 3/4. I didn't measure it before and after, and both sides are set exactly the same, and they're exactly in the same spot on the springs. I didn't want either side to actuate differently, so you can see the stance of the truck. So that's where we're at. Don't know how they're going to hold up to rust. Possibly, maybe I'll prime and paint those brackets or something like that at some point. But yeah, It's what I want to do. And I'm shooting this on the new GoPro, so I'm experimenting with views and stuff like that. I don't know how much I like the fisheye on the wide view and whether I'll crank it down to normal view, but you guys give me your input. All right, have a great day. Thanks.